Give me 40 minutes not to teach you effort, not to explain money, not to convince you of anything, but to place you where wealth can finally reach you. Most people never arrive there, not because they are undeserving, but because they never stop long enough for the current to catch them. You've likely spent years chasing improvement, reading, affirming, planning, working harder than you were ever meant to. Yet the breakthrough you want has remained just ahead of reach. That's not because you missed something. It's because you've been approaching wealth from the wrong side. There is a state where money is no longer pursued. It is recognized. In that state, supply moves toward you naturally, without pressure, without urgency. 40 minutes is enough time to guide you into that position if you stop resisting it. Most people believe wealth begins with action, but action taken from strain only multiplies strain. The origin of prosperity is always internal, always invisible at first. Until that inner position changes, outer effort only circles the same result. What you are listening for tonight is not information. It is alignment. Alignment happens quietly, when the mind loosens its grip and expectation replaces force. That shift does not require years. It requires permission and time without interruption. 40 minutes is long enough for the nervous system to soften, long enough for old assumptions to lose authority, long enough for the deeper intelligence to rise and take command. Wealth responds to that intelligence, not to pressure. You may notice a part of you doubting already, questioning the promise, measuring the claim. That voice is familiar. It has protected you by demanding proof. But proof always follows agreement, never precedes it. What if wealth is not delayed, but blocked by tension? What if the very effort you've been praised for has been the barrier? These questions are not meant to disturb you. They are meant to release you. When you allow yourself to rest into expectation, something subtle changes. Life stops being something you manage and becomes something that supports you. That transition often happens fastest when the mind is gently occupied and the will relaxes. During these 40 minutes, you are not asked to visualize perfectly, repeat phrases intensely, or believe blindly. You are only asked to listen without arguing. Listening is an act of trust, and trust is the currency wealth recognizes instantly. Many have tried to force abundance by thinking harder. Few have allowed it by softening first. This is why results feel random to some and effortless to others. The difference is not talent, it is position. As you stay with this, you may feel impatience arise, a desire for speed. That impatience signals how accustomed you are to effort. Let it pass. Wealth moves fastest when it is not chased. 40 minutes is enough time for the old story to lose momentum. Enough time for a new assumption to take root. Assumptions are powerful not because they are loud, but because life obeys them without question. You do not need to know how wealth will arrive. Knowing how is the mind's demand for control. Control slows what alignment accelerates. What is meant for you already knows the route. If you've ever experienced something falling into place unexpectedly, you've felt this law working. A chance meeting, a sudden opening, a solution appearing without effort. Those moments were not luck, they were alignment briefly restored. Tonight is an invitation to remain there longer, not by doing more, but by stepping aside. 40 minutes of cooperation outweighs years of strain. There is no promise here of instant riches, only something more reliable. A repositioning so precise that circumstances must follow. When the inner stance changes, life reorganizes itself without being asked. Stay with this. Let curiosity replace skepticism. Let stillness do the work thinking could not. The minutes ahead are not empty, they are active, deliberate, and exact. By the time these 40 minutes end, you may not feel excitement. You may feel calm, relief, certainty without explanation. That is how wealth announces its approach. Something is already moving. When I speak of wealth, I do not speak of coins or ledgers or the restless hunt for worldly advantage. I speak of a state of consciousness that draws supply as steadily as a magnet draws iron filings. And as you listen now, I want you to understand that you are not being asked to change your life by force. You are being asked to shift the angle from which you behold it. Most people spend their entire existence leaning forward, straining outward, chasing after their good as though it were a fugitive. Yet all the while, their good stands just behind them, waiting for the moment they grow still enough to turn and recognize it. There is a deep spiritual current that carries every man and woman toward their highest prosperity. But few ever feel it because they splash so violently against the stream. They try to think themselves forward, worry themselves forward, and labor themselves forward, not knowing that wealth comes by stillness and agreement, not by tension. As long as the heartbeat is hurried by fear, the purse is tightened by fear, and decisions are made in a fog of effort, abundance stands politely at the door, unwilling to enter a home so unsettled. But when the mind quiets and the spirit sinks into expectancy, the door opens without a sound. I remember a man who came to me worn thin by years of toil. He said, "Mrs. Shinn, I have worked harder than any man I know, yet fortune passes me by." His voice carried the tremor of exhaustion, and I could see that he had mistaken effort for alignment. I said to him, "My dear, wealth is not earned by strenuous labor. Wealth is invited by consciousness. Supply will not visit the home of the anxious. It seeks the dwelling of the poised." He looked puzzled, for the world had taught him the opposite. But he obeyed my instruction to sit for 5 minutes each day, breathe gently, and say, "Divine order takes charge of my affairs." He told me later that those 5 minutes felt like stepping out of a storm, and soon thereafter, unexpected channels opened work he had not pursued, payments he had long forgotten, opportunities that arrived of their own accord. His effort had built walls, his stillness opened gates. If you listen carefully, you will notice that your own life has spoken this truth to you many times. Think of the moments when opportunities arose without striving, when help appeared just as you released your worry, when abundance drifted into your experience like a leaf carried by a quiet breeze. Those moments did not happen by accident. They happened because you briefly ceased disturbing the waters. You allowed the invisible current to rise and meet you. The same current is moving even now. All you must do is stop pushing against it. Most people live as though they are responsible for every inch of progress. They carry the weight of their affairs like a pack upon their shoulders, and they wonder why their steps falter. But man is not meant to be the architect and the laborer. He is meant to speak the decree and allow the unseen forces to arrange the material. When you declare, "My good now comes to me under grace in perfect ways," you summon heavenly masons who build paths you could never carve with your own hands. But when you say, "I must figure this out," you snatch the tools from their grasp and attempt to build alone, usually in darkness. There is a woman I once taught who lived in constant tension about money. She counted every penny with fear and treated each expense as an enemy. She said, "Every bill feels like an attack." I told her gently, "My dear, your bills have become soldiers because you speak of them as though they were. Bless your bills, and they will bless you in return." She resisted at first, for fear had become her familiar companion. But she obeyed and began saying, "Divine supply meets every obligation with ease and plenty." Almost immediately, the atmosphere in her home softened. Payments arrived effortlessly. New income opened with surprising grace. She said to me, "It feels as though something has shifted inside my very bones." I replied, "It has. You have stepped out of the vibration of strain. You must understand that wealth cannot find you while you stand in the vibration of urgency. Urgency is a storm, and storms scatter blessings. But expectancy is a calm sea upon which prosperity sails smoothly. When you release the fierce grip of self-reliance and say, 'God, take this,' you do not abandon responsibility, you step into alignment. And alignment carries you farther in a moment than strain carries you in a decade. Consider the lilies of the field. They do not toil. Yet Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. The lilies are not wealthy because they strive. They are wealthy because they occupy their right place in divine design. They trust the soil, the sun, the rain. They unfold without fear. If a lily attempted to rush its blooming, it would tear its own petals. If a man attempts to rush his prosperity, he tears the fabric of his intuition. A young clerk once told me he feared losing his position and therefore spent every day in anxious vigilance. He said, "I watch every shadow, every change in my employer's tone." I told him, "You have been guarding the wrong gate. Guard your consciousness, not your job." I taught him to affirm, "I am in my right place, and I cannot be removed." Within weeks, not only did his position stabilize, but he was entrusted with greater responsibility. He said, "It is as though the moment I stopped gripping the job gripped me." He had reversed the current. Let me give you another picture. Imagine a man rowing upstream with great effort, his brow furrowed, his breath strained, believing progress depends upon his strength. Now imagine he turns his boat gently and allows the river to carry him. The river is divine order. The turning is alignment. The difference between strain and supply is as simple as the turning of a boat. When you listen to me now, I do not want you to gather information as though you were building a mental library. I want you to sink into the truth that your good is already at hand. You are not trying to summon wealth from afar. You are allowing wealth to reveal itself where it has always been. Supply is not delayed, it is obstructed by tension. And the moment you soften, the obstruction dissolves. Say softly within yourself, "I release all strain. I allow my good to reach me." Do not force the words. Let them float like a leaf upon still water. The subconscious does not respond to effort. It responds to tone. Speak gently, and it listens. Speak urgently, and it resists. As your consciousness begins to settle, others will perceive the change even before you do. They may say, "You look rested," or "Your voice sounds different." They may treat you with more warmth, more confidence, more generosity. For people respond to your inner vibration long before they respond to your outer words. A calm man attracts opportunities because opportunities recognize him as a worthy custodian. A strained man repels opportunities because they sense his inner chaos. A student of mine once said, "Mrs. Shinn, the moment I stopped speaking fear about money, others began offering me chances to prosper." I told her, "Of course they did. You ceased being a beggar of good and became a host of it. Blessings prefer a peaceful home." As you continue to listen, you may feel the old voice of worry trying to rise. Let it rise and fall like a wave against a rock. Do not argue with it. Do not negotiate. Simply return to the decree. Divine order takes charge of my affairs. This decree is not a request, it is a command. It asserts that your good is governed by a power beyond fluctuation. You declare that wealth does not come from your employer, your business, or your circumstances. Wealth comes through these channels, but not from them. And here lies the first great secret I want you to carry through these 40 minutes. Wealth recognizes the one who has ceased resisting it. You do not need to qualify yourself, justify yourself, or prove your worthiness. You need only stand in the vibration of calm expectation, and wealth will find you. Say within yourself, I stand ready. As you rest a moment within the stillness we have begun to cultivate, I want you to understand something few people have ever been told. Wealth does not rush toward the anxious. Wealth approaches the peaceful. It draws near to the one who has emptied their hands of struggle and extended them in quiet expectancy. Most people clench their fists around their difficulties and then wonder why blessings cannot land upon their lives. A clenched fist is a closed door, but open your hand, open your consciousness, and supply a lights like a bird returning home. I remember a woman who lived in fierce tension about her finances. Every day she tightened her shoulders, braced her breath, and whispered under her breath, how will I manage? As long as she asked that question, she remained in the vibration of uncertainty. Her bills multiplied because her fear multiplied them. Fear is a seed, as surely as faith is a seed. I told her, my dear, you do not need to know how you will manage. You need only know that God manages. At first, she resisted this truth, for the world had taught her that vigilance was safety, but vigilance is merely fear in disguise. When she replaced the question with the decree, every obligation is met with ease. I am supported by unseen currents. Her atmosphere changed. She no longer rushed. She no longer checked accounts with trembling fingers. And when the tension dissolved, help appeared as naturally as dawn follows night. She said, it feels as though something was waiting for me to stop being afraid, and indeed it was. There is a law of non-resistance that governs all things. When a man pushes, life pushes back. When he pulls, life retreats. But when he stands in calm receptivity, life flows toward him with perfect certainty. I once taught a man who fought every circumstance in his life. He argued with delays, raged at obstacles, cursed the smallest inconveniences. His path was filled with resistance because he resisted his path. I told him, you are fighting shadows. The moment you cease struggling, the shadows will vanish. I taught him to say, I meet every situation with divine calm. He practiced reluctantly, but he practiced. Soon his days grew smoother. Small tasks completed themselves. People who once contested him now cooperated. He came to me surprised, saying, it seems everything has softened. I replied, everything softened because you softened. Do not underestimate the spiritual power of letting go. The moment you release tension, you signal to the universe that you trust divine design. Divine design does not require your supervision. It requires your cooperation. When you insist upon forcing outcomes, you declare that you do not trust the invisible order at work. But when you say, I cast this burden on the Christ within, you hand your affairs to the only power capable of arranging them perfectly. I remember a young man who faced a financial decision that filled him with dread. He was torn between two options and feared choosing wrongly. He asked me, which path should I take? I said, take neither until you release fear. Fear clouds intuition. I instructed him to sit quietly and say, divine intelligence makes the way plain. He resisted the stillness, for he believed that thinking harder would reveal the answer. But thinking harder only tightened the knot. When he finally grew quiet, a simple idea came to him, a third option he had overlooked entirely. It proved to be precisely the right one. He said, I cannot believe how simple it was. I replied, it was simple because you stopped complicating it. When you listen now, you may feel something within you loosening, as though the inner grip that has tried to control life is beginning to tire. Let it relax fully. You are not relinquishing power, you are aligning with greater power. There is nothing noble in strain. There is nothing holy in anxiety. Strain is self-will out of place. Anxiety is imagination used against the self. True power is calm. True prosperity is peaceful. You have been taught that to release control is to risk loss, but the opposite is true. When you cling tightly, you retain only the small portion you can grasp. When you release, you open the way for greater supply to enter. I once knew a woman who clutched every coin as though it were her last. She feared giving, spending, sharing, and so her finances remained small, for she never made room for greater good. When she finally dared to affirm, "I give freely and fearlessly," knowing it returns multiplied, her entire atmosphere changed. The very week she trusted the law, an unexpected inheritance found her. She said, "I feel as though God has been waiting for me to loosen my hands." And indeed, God had. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine that wealth is a gentle river flowing endlessly. When you stand rigid and fearful, you create a stone in its path. The water must divert around you. But when you soften, when you become porous, receptive, trusting, the river flows through you easily. You cannot dam a river with your hands, but you can divert it with your consciousness. And you can welcome it by the same means. A woman once told me she prayed for abundance but feared change. Her fear blocked her prayer. The subconscious does not answer words. It answers vibration. If your voice says, "I desire wealth," but your energy says, "I fear it," the law obeys the fear. She asked, "How do I stop fearing?" I told her, "You do not fight fear. You replace it." I instructed her to say, "Each morning, I walk fearlessly in God's abundant universe. All that belongs to me appears in perfect ways." She did not believe it at first, but the subconscious accepted it before the intellect did. Soon, her circumstances shifted. She entered her right work. Her finances improved. The fear dropped away like an old garment. Others will notice this shift in you even before you do. They will see a calmness in your eyes, a gentleness in your tone, a quiet conviction in your bearing. They may not know what has changed, but they will sense that you have stepped into a new rhythm, one that does not struggle, one that does not tremble, one that does not beg. They will treat you accordingly. People take their cue from your consciousness. When you carry yourself as one supported by the universe responds through people. It is a law too consistent to deny. A man once said to me, "Mrs. Shinn, the moment I stopped fighting life, opportunities began to chase me." I answered, "Of course they did. Opportunities seek those who stand still long enough to be found." Most people race so quickly that supply cannot catch them. Slow your inner world, not your ambition, not your vision, not your intention, only your urgency. Urgency is the enemy of manifestation. Calm expectation is its midwife. Say within yourself now, "I am at peace with my prosperity. What is mine comes to me with ease." Do not strain to feel the truth. Let the truth rest upon you like a soft shawl. Wealth does not require your intensity. It requires your agreement. As the minutes pass, you may feel a quiet certainty rising in you. Not excitement, certainty. Prosperity does not need excitement. It needs recognition. When a man recognizes his good, his shoulders drop, his breath sighs, his spirit expands. He no longer chases wealth. He allows it. And now you are ready to learn the next secret. Wealth moves toward the one who expects it. Expectation is not wishing. It is quiet preparation. It is the inner stance that says, "I am ready." Wealth responds instantly to readiness. Now that you have begun to loosen the grip of strain, Let us enter the realm where wealth first takes form. Not in your bank account, not in your work, not in your circumstances, but in your expectation. Expectation is the silent architect of experience. It builds without hammer or nail. It summons without effort. Wealth recognizes the one who expects it the way a bird recognizes its own flock. And if you listen with the inner ear now, you may sense how much of your past was shaped not by your desires, but by your expectations. A man may desire prosperity with all his heart, but if he expects lack, the law will answer his expectation, not his wish. Desire is the flower, expectation is the root. The flower follows the root, never the reverse. I once taught a woman who prayed daily for abundance, yet prepared her life for disappointment. Her prayers were filled with hope, but her actions were filled with dread. She checked her mail as though expecting trouble. She answered her telephone as though anticipating bad news. She approached her work as though luck were against her. She said, "I am doing everything right, yet nothing changes." I told her, "Your prayers ask for good, but your expectation invites the opposite. The law cannot serve two masters." I asked her to greet her day with a new decree. "Something wonderful is on its way to me today, and I expect it." She felt at first as though she were pretending, but the subconscious does not measure sincerity. It measures repetition. And within 3 weeks, her life began to rearrange itself. Unexpected income, new friendships, opportunities that had been dormant suddenly awakened. She said, "It happened so quickly." And I replied, "Expectation shortens the path. There is a reason, Scripture says, 'According to your faith be it unto you.'" Faith is expectation clothed in confidence. It is the inner posture of one who has already received the answer. Christ never said, "I hope you will be healed." He said, "Rise up and walk." He expected his word to be obeyed, and so it was. When he blessed the loaves and fishes, he expected multiplication. Expectation is spiritual authority. Most people misunderstand expectation because they confuse it with wishing. Wishing is a frail thing, made of cloudy emotion and restless longing. Expectation is solid as stone. Wishing trembles. Expectation stands tall. Wishing leans toward the future. Expectation stands in the present and declares, "My good is already arriving." Wishing makes a man a beggar. Expectation makes him a commander. Let me share a story of a young man who dreamed of advancing in his work. He said, "Mrs. Shinn, I hope my employer notices my efforts." I said, "Your hope makes you a servant of chance. Expectation makes you an heir of supply." I instructed him to prepare his home office as though he were already stepping into higher work. Clear the desk, polish the chair, place fresh paper where new responsibilities could be welcomed. Then I told him to say, "My perfect opportunity now comes. I expect recognition." He did as I said. Weeks passed quietly. And then one morning, his employer approached him out of the blue with a new role, greater pay, and expanded influence. The young man said, "It was as though he had been watching me for months, but I knew it was the law answering expectation." Expectation even reshapes your appearance. People feel it. They sense when you are inwardly aligned with prosperity. There is a subtle shift in your posture, a steadiness in your voice, a brightness in your countenance. The one who expects wealth walks with grace, not haste. Their eyes meet life with openness, not suspicion. Others treat them accordingly. A woman once told me, "People speak to me differently now. They offer opportunities I never asked for." I replied, "Your atmosphere changed, and life is adjusting itself to match." Consider the parable of the 10 virgins. 5 were prepared, 5 were not. The prepared ones carried oil in their lamps not because they expected a delay, but because they expected the bridegroom. Their readiness was the magnet for fulfillment. Expectation always fills its own lamp. The unprepared were cast into confusion because they anticipated nothing. A man without expectation wanders. A man with expectation receives his appointed good. Let me give you a simple metaphor. Imagine placing a lantern in your window at night. The lantern is expectation, prosperity, seeing the glow, knows where to land. But if the lantern is dark, if you prepare for nothing, your good passes by silently because it sees no welcome. When a woman sets an extra place at her table for the blessing she seeks, she calls her good into form. When a man prepares the desk for his new work, he shapes the mold into which opportunity must pour. I recall a woman who desired companionship. She prepared her guest room, placed fresh flowers in a vase, laid out an extra towel, and every morning she said, "Divine love now brings my perfect companion." For they believed she was only amusing herself. But her expectation carved a path through the unseen. Soon a gentleman entered her life, and they built a harmonious union. Her friends said, "How fortunate you are," and she replied, "Fortune came because I expected it." Expectation is also the guardian of speech. When a man expects good, he refuses to speak fear, for fear contradicts his new identity. When a woman expects abundance, she does not say, "I cannot afford," for such words would be unworthy of her consciousness. The tongue follows expectation. When expectation rises, the tongue is purified. It becomes a wand of creative power rather than a rod of complaint. Yet many ask, how do I expect good when my past is filled with disappointment? I tell them, expectation is not built from the past. It is built from decision. A farmer does not look at last year's barren field and say, "I expect barrenness." He sows anew. He waters anew. He expects anew. And the field answers the expectation of the present, not the memory of the past. A woman once came to me, grieving over years of financial struggle. She said, "My history teaches me to expect little." I replied, "Your history has nothing to teach. Your word has everything to command." I asked her to picture the most peaceful moment of her life and expand that image until it filled her consciousness. Then I told her to say, "My good comes swiftly and surely. I expect miracles." Within a short time, she received a position of service she never dreamed possible, and it brought prosperity and peace. She said, "I expected very little, and I received almost nothing. Now I expect much, and much arrives." Expectation also awakens intuition. A man who expects guidance receives it. A woman who expects timing to be perfect sees perfection everywhere. Expectation sharpens the inner ear, making the faint whispers of direction audible. The man who says, "I never know what to do," clouds his intuition. The woman who says, "I am divinely led," steps into a lighted path. There is a profound difference between the one who prepares inwardly and the one who waits passively. Passive waiting is doubt in disguise. Spiritual preparation is faith in motion. When you prepare inwardly by expecting wealth, you vibrate at the frequency where wealth feels at home. When you expect nothing, even blessings must remain at a distance, for they cannot enter a consciousness that has not made room for them. Say softly within yourself now, "I expect my good. I prepare for my abundance. I welcome the blessings assigned to me." Feel the atmosphere shift. Feel your inner home brighten. Feel your shoulders relax as expectancy takes root. You no longer lean forward in desperation. You stand tall in recognition. Now you are ready to step into the next great law, the creative picture, the mold that wealth must fill once expectation has prepared the vessel. And now that you have begun to expect your good, You must form the vessel into which that good will pour. Expectation opens the door, but the picture prepares the room. Every man carries within his imagination a silent sketch of his fate, not drawn in lines or colors, but in assumptions, symbols, and inward scenes that shape the outer world with unfailing accuracy. Most people imagine unconsciously and then call their results fate. But fate is nothing more than the picture made visible. Just as a house is the blueprint made brick. You cannot rise above your mental picture any more than water can rise above its source. You may desire prosperity. You may expect prosperity. But unless you picture prosperity, your life cannot take the shape of abundance. I once counseled a man who had spoken excellent words and practiced expectation faithfully, yet his affairs remained strangely limited. As I listened to him, I saw the trouble immediately. His inner picture contradicted his outer words. He affirmed, "I walk in abundance," but inwardly he pictured himself struggling, scrambling, forever one step behind. The subconscious does not obey sentences made of air. It obeys pictures made of substance. I told him, "You are attempting to pour gold into a cracked mold." The moment he changed the picture, imagining himself calm, provided for, standing in a larger room with broader windows, his life began to expand in ways that astonished him. The subconscious mind is a master builder, but it needs form. It does not create the mold, it fills the mold you provide. If you picture narrowness, it builds narrowness. If you picture expansion, it builds expansion. If you picture yourself as one who must beg for opportunities, it produces such conditions. If you picture yourself as one who naturally receives, the world rearranges itself to match. A woman once came to me saying, "Nothing ever grows for me." I asked her to describe her mental picture when she imagined prosperity. She said, "I see myself in a small, dim room, hunched over my accounts." I replied, "That is the room your consciousness lives in. The world cannot offer you a better dwelling while you remain seated in that one." I instructed her to imagine instead a spacious, sunlit room with large windows and a view of open skies. Within weeks, she felt compelled to rearrange her actual home, moving furniture, clearing clutter, making space. And as she cleared space outwardly, her consciousness expanded inwardly. Soon, new opportunities appeared, and she stepped into work she had secretly longed for, but never believed possible. Her picture had changed, and life had obeyed. Do not underestimate the power of small symbols. Florence always taught that life spoke in symbols, for the subconscious understands images far better than words. A woman who desired companionship placed a chair beside hers at the table. Another who desired travel bought a trunk and stood it near her door. A man who desired promotion placed fresh paper upon his desk daily. These actions were not superstition, they were the manifestation of an inner picture, and the universe answered the picture, not the action itself. Let us look for a moment at the parable of Abraham. When God wished to expand Abraham's consciousness, he did not give him a lecture, he gave him a picture. "Look at the stars," he said, "so shall your descendants be." Abraham's life expanded because his inner picture expanded. You do not need complicated imagery. You need only a picture large enough to hold the wealth that belongs to you. A man once told me he tried to picture wealth, but saw only confusion. I said, "Choose one image that symbolizes abundance to you. It may be a key, a door, a golden cup, a full purse. Hold that picture until it becomes real to you." He chose a lantern shining in darkness. Each night he pictured the lantern glowing brighter, guiding blessings toward him. Soon he found himself receiving unexpected offers and stepping into new experiences that matched the warmth of the lantern he had pictured. He said, "The image became alive." And I answered, "It became alive because your subconscious accepted it." The mental picture is powerful, not because it is vivid, but because it is consistent. You need not see every detail. A single symbol, held with quiet expectancy, reshapes your entire vibration. The subconscious cannot resist a steady picture. It must fill it. It must respond to it. It must seek out conditions to match it. Imagine now that your prosperity is a liquid seeking to fill a vessel. If your vessel is small, your prosperity will be small. If your vessel is cracked, your prosperity will leak. If your vessel is turned upside down, your inner picture fixed upon fear, prosperity cannot enter at all. But if you hold your vessel upright and expand its edges with faith, wealth pours in at once.